Well, let's look ahead to the committee appearance Wednesday of Jody Wilson-Raybould with three members of Parliament. Marco Mendicino is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities, the former Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice. Michael Cooper is the Justice Critic for the Official Opposition and a committee member. And Marie Rankins, the Justice Critic for the NDP, also a committee member. Good to see you all, gentlemen.
Thanks, Peter.
Mr. Mendicino, let me start with you. Jody Wilson-Raybould will finally have the chance to speak her truth, as she has put it and has demanded. The committee has agreed to allow her to make a 30-minute opening statement at the beginning of the committee meeting, 3 times longer than is normally allowed for opening statements. What are you expecting to hear from her tomorrow?
Well, first I would observe that it's a good thing that she will have the opportunity to come to the committee and to provide a statement, and I'm happy to hear that the committee has shown some flexibility to give her some additional time, which was at her request. And as for expectations, I mean, as I have said many occasions when asked, I think Ms. Wilson-Raybould will speak for herself, and I would just also point out that it's a good thing that the committee is doing its work. I know that the opposition has expressed concerns at various points along the way to getting here that they wouldn't convene or that they wouldn't hold witnesses, hear from witnesses, I'm sorry. They're doing both, and tomorrow we'll hear from Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Okay. Mr. Cooper, what are you expecting to hear from Jody Wilson-Raybould, and what questions do you want her to answer?
Well, we need to hear from her to talk about who said what when at the various points of time. Of course, there are certain dates that have been identified with certain key players in the PMO, as well as the Prime Minister himself. We need to hear from Jody Wilson-Raybould about those communications, and there may be additional dates that we don't know about. But let me say that I have some concern about what we're going to be able to get to tomorrow.
Okay, what are your concerns?
Well, Ms. Wilson-Raybould issued a letter this afternoon that noted that the waiver of solicitor-client privilege pursuant to the order in council is limited to the time that she was Attorney General. We know that, but she indicated in her letter that there are communications that may be pertinent that are not covered by that waiver. So that is a concern about whether or not we'll be able to get the full proof from Jody Wilson-Raybould. It appears she has reservations and felt the need to alert the committee, so that's a problem.
Let me come back to some of that. Marie Rankin, do you share those same concerns?
I sure do, because what this is about is the allegation that there has been political interference in her decision-making. We know that there were 50 meetings with SNC Lavalin. You know, when this government wants to do favors for its friends, it gave them, as you know, a couple of years ago, $100,000 plus in illegal donations. They sure get the attention of the government right away, but when the rest of us want to get things from government, like housing and a crisis like we live in, it's a very different story. Why did they browbeat her? Why was it that these meetings took place after it was decided that you cannot get this SNC Lavalin? And was she pressured such that it crossed the line into impropriety? But those are the things we got to find out.
And that's the real big question, I guess.
It is, absolutely.
So, Mr. Mendicino, I guess one of the things that we'll watch for tomorrow, and when we hear from Jody Wilson-Raybould, if she doesn't identify any, and I guess this whole thing comes down to how we define pressure and the nuances of what's permitted, what's not permitted. If she doesn't identify any direct threats, if she just says that the pressure was uncomfortable and I didn't like it, but we can't point to something that looks like it may have been something more sinister than that to try and influence the process, does that end the matter?
Well, nor should we be speculating about any of those things. And I think what we have to do is come back to the basic principle that she should be given the opportunity to provide testimony. I know Murray is experienced counsel. And
are you worried about what you're going to hear from her?
Well, can I just be permitted to finish the thought, Peter, because I think it's important. Murray's a very experienced counsel, and he would tell you that in our legal training that we shouldn't be attempting to come to hard and fast conclusions about characterizing her interactions with the government. And that's something that Murray and the opposition have done repeatedly by using phrases like browbeating or badgering and whatnot. Let Ms. Wilson-Raybould offer her testimony, to do it in an objective manner before a committee that has the mandate to hear from her.
Are you worried that what she'll say will be more damaging than what this issue's been already to the government?
I'm pleased that she has the opportunity to come before committee, to make a statement, to answer questions, and that is the most important part of this whole process.
All right, Mr. Cooper, go ahead.
Well, but it appears that there are certain pertinent communications that she's not going to be able to speak about, including her time as Veterans Affairs Minister, including the time immediately following which she was fired as Attorney General. And so, again...
But we've seen enough committee meetings around here, and you know enough about how the process works that we'll be able to tell, won't we, if she's come before this committee and still feels constrained in the kinds of things she can say. There will be a way that she's answering questions. There will be a way that she's deferring questions that will tell us there's something more there. Isn't that right?
Sure, but in her letter today, she indicates that there is potentially a problem. So what the Prime Minister should have done, which he didn't do, is lift all solicitor-client privilege so that she can speak. It took long enough for the Prime Minister to waive the solicitor-client privilege and cabinet confidentiality during the time that she was Attorney General. I mean, just last week, David Lametti was saying it's all so very complicated, and then it was finally lifted. So it's not good enough, and I think it's just part of this narrative of what we're seeing as part of a PMO cover-up.
Go ahead, Mr. Rankin.
Peter, what we also need, and they haven't allowed us yet, the Liberal majority on the committee, to guarantee that we'll be able to hear from Jerry Butts, all the other people in the Prime Minister's office who had a dozen meetings on this.
But doesn't this waiver leave open that door now?
It does, if and only if the Liberal majority votes to allow that. They will probably say, oh, nothing here, she's testified, drive on. That would be very disturbing. No, I can't speculate. No, I can only tell you my concerns at this stage.
Wouldn't that be hard to do, given the waiver suggests that the committee is welcome to, and I'm paraphrasing here, the committee can go ahead and interview anybody she had communication with along this file, and that includes members of the PMO.
It's a direct communications.
Has to be something that the majority of the committee agree to. It's my understanding.
It would be hard for them to say no if that's right in the waiver.
I do hope you're right. And remember, we're talking about what could have been pressure to do something that was illegal. Why do I say that? Because the section of the Act says if it's about the national economic interest, it's not a relevant consideration. So why were they browbeating her? And yes, I think we can definitely conclude that based on what she has already indicated thus far. I don't understand why that was even a discussion point. It was illegal by one reading of the legislation.
Mr. Mendicino, I'll let you pick up on that as well, but also in the context of, do you think should it be okay for Mr. Butts and Katie Telford to be called before this committee to give their version of events as well?
I'm going to say what I've said on many occasions when I've been asked about the work of the committee. Let it do its work. It's hearing from witnesses.
But you're a lawyer too, and you're reading of that waiver. Do you believe that suggests that the way the waiver is worded, it would suggest to me, and I'm not a lawyer, that leaves not only open the possibility, but suggests that it would be okay to have other people called before the committee if that's what the committee wants.
I'm saying, Peter, it's not my job to speculate as to which witnesses the committee is going to choose to hear from in its wisdom. And I would just, sorry, if I just finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I get interrupted.
I should point out I'm the only non-lawyer in our discussion tonight, by the way, right?
That's okay. We still like you, Peter. My point is that it is ultimately up to the committee to choose which witnesses it will hear from. In the past, the members of the opposition have said they wanted to hear from Ms. Wilson-Raybould. We're now hearing from Ms. Wilson-Raybould. Let's hear her evidence tomorrow, and we'll go from there.
Well, they have said all along they want to hear from Jerry Butts and Katie Telford.
Yeah. Well,
go ahead, Mr.
I mean, look, we wanted to hear from Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jerry Butts and Katie Telford. Liberal MPs blocked that until they had no choice but to call Jody Wilson-Raybould. The Prime Minister's office made excuses about lifting solicitor-client privilege until they basically had no choice but to lift it. But now we're in this situation where the waiver may be inadequate. And now we'll see what happens with the other witnesses. But why has it come to this? Why not just allow everyone to come forward and move forward? Why does it have to be so complicated? It isn't that complicated.
Okay, Mr. Rankin, I'll give a final word to you.
Well, I just want to take us back to why we're here. I think Canadians can get lost in the weeds. We're looking at the possibility of political interference with a criminal prosecution. We all, as Canadians, must be concerned about that. I'm not here to say that happened. I'm here to say we need to get to the bottom of it. I'm very grateful that the government accepted the NDP motion, which asked for the Prime Minister to waive solicitor-client privilege. I do not yet believe that we're going to hear necessarily from the other people in the Prime Minister's office. I hope we are.
Okay, thank you all for your time tonight, and a big day to pay attention to tomorrow. Thank you all.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.